got my name right? Good evening. Be quiet. Good evening. It's Tuesday night, August 2nd, and if you are watching us on Comcast Channel 11 or YouTube, you are watching us live. It's 8 o'clock, and we are in Oregon City at Willamette Falls Media Center, just right off of Jackson. It's 1101 Jackson Street, and I have an awesome guest tonight. Her name is Sonya Fischer, and she is a Clackamas County Commissioner in seat 5, and she is up for re-election, and I am excited we voted for her, and we will vote for her again, and my mission is to hopefully have you vote for her too. So welcome, Sonya. How is your night?
It's wonderful. The heat has dissipated just a little bit, and we are not so sweltering.
Yeah, not at all.
Very nice.
I want to tell you how much I appreciate you being here. We've had a little bit of time to discuss some stuff, and it's been lovely actually getting to meet you. So thank you.
Wonderful meeting you too.
It's an honor to have you. And my first question is obvious. Can you tell us about your background and maybe a little overview of why you got into public service?
Thank you for the question. So I grew up in East Multnomah County. I am the daughter of a produce buyer for Safeway and a stay-at-home mom. I spent every weekend with my daddy traipsing through the fields of a lot of Clackamas County, even some Multnomah County back in the day, those years ago, 40, 50 years ago.
Wow.
There were lots of fields throughout the region. So I have a real love for our natural landscape. As I was growing up, I had a brother who had some mental health challenges, and I saw how that affected our family. I saw how that affected him, and when I was going through my adolescence, I visited him at the mental hospital where he was, and that really impressed upon me the struggle that some people have, and especially to see my brother suffering to such a degree. And that sort of sense of seeing the world, seeing what's wrong with the world, seeing challenges with how our family was treated, seeing things that just weren't right, led me to just like, gotta make things better, you gotta get involved, you gotta fight for things. It reminds me, you asked me this question when I was, let's see, how old was I? My senior year? Maybe my junior year in high school. I was the elections secretary for our school elections. And because I believed so much in our democracy, not only did we have our student body elections, but I called the county elections. I got voting booths. I put together a voter's pamphlet statement. I did a whole elections to try to simulate involvement for our student body so that people would be engaged. Because my mission as a young person, seeing that the world didn't work for some people, was to have engagement, have people be engaged.
Definitely.
Well, when as a young mom, just barely 19 when I had my first child, Christine, and that child ended up having very significant developmental disabilities. And so really my call to action that I'm sort of living through today as a county commissioner was seeing the incredible barriers and the walls that were put up everywhere for my little daughter, my precious little Christine, and her ability to succeed from her earliest days of needing, to go to preschool to get supports. There were so many walls, wall after wall after wall after wall, and I could see that government didn't work. It didn't work for families like mine. It didn't work for many other families, and it was all that concern and passion that I developed as a young adolescent was just funneled into advocacy for people with developmental disabilities.
So that gives me a bonus question. Mm-hmm. Who got you involved with government? I mean, while you were in school, who was the person or people?
So it was my teacher, Mr. Lund, who was the activities director for our school, and our vice principal. People didn't like our vice principal. His name was Mr. Lauren Fitz. But I adored him because he saw something some just ability to converse and lead and nurture, and we would argue and spar back and forth on issues of the day. But that engagement were very important to me when I was in high school. Centennial School District is where I went to school. Yeah.
That's awesome. What a great story. So this has like been a foundation for you since you were very young.
Yeah.
And so you're pretty much like right where you need to be.
Well, what really led me the whole time in dealing with my daughter, it's government can do better.
Yes.
Government doesn't work. Government is here to provide a safety net. It's not here to solve every problem. But when there are situations where people are in distress, when we have natural disasters, when we have a crisis, when we need the roads, when we need our garbage picked up, when we need clean water, we need clean air, we want to protect our natural landscape. Government has a role in our lives.
An important role.
And it needs to do better. And so that accountability piece is really important to me in my public service.
So with the next question is in dealing with homelessness, I saw a July 6th interview with the commissioners at the veterans, the little veterans community that was built up in 2018. That's fabulous. What other programs is Clackamas County working on to kind of help the homeless community not be homeless?
Right. It's a very good question. And homelessness is a challenge for many factors. But on the West Coast, up and down the West Coast region, we see that there's an affordability crisis for housing. When we had the Great Recession of 2008 through 2011, builders stopped building. It compressed the ability to have access to housing. So that was one thing that really happened. The other factor that has happened is just affordability overall. So childcare, rent, just being able to afford living has priced so many people out. Prescription drug costs extraordinarily high for some people. So these things have priced people out of the ability to afford a home. I'll never forget, I just want to show you one story.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
A woman who was 90 years old came before our commission and talked about, and this was back, probably 2018, that she came to share her story with us, that she could either afford getting her medicine or paying her rent.
Yep.
And so what she did, she needed her medicine. So she kept that, she moved into her van. And when she was before our commission, she talked about how challenging it was. Like the day's mission was, okay, where am I going to find a restroom? Where am I going to do that? And just how the lack of dignity. Fortunately, she got connected with our social services in Clackamas County and was able to move into supportive housing. And that was really wonderful to hear her story. But at 90 years old,
that's ridiculous.
She came to share. And I have many stories like that. But oftentimes it's because people can't afford what they need to survive, so they have to make some compromises and some choices. And one thing that goes is the ability to afford housing, and that's a real tragedy.
It's more than a tragedy. It's incomprehensible. When I was in my early mid-20s, I lived on the streets in Portland. And on the other side of Burnside, that back then, Portland was a completely different place. And Burnside was the cutoff between industry, office workers, and teenagers hanging out downtown, and homeless people, the homeless vets, a lot of the homeless Asians and people with mental health issues. And at that time, in the 80s, that was your largest collective of homeless people in the area. The rest of us were couch surfing or whatever, right? What happened? I mean, we went from this collective of homeless people who could have been helped to, oh my goodness, we have, 1,400, I think it's closer almost to 3,000 now, homeless people in this area.
There's probably actually more if you're looking at the Tri-County region.
I was looking at Portland, the Portland
Yeah,
metro.
more than 3,000 people. But
Wow.
so what I also want to, so why did it happen?
Yeah, what happened?
I think it's a combination of factors, but much of it is the affordability crisis and the lack of jobs that pay a living wage. So it's not so easy to make ends meet, and it's people get priced out of their ability to afford housing, which has increased, and it's a lack of supply. It's basic economics. Not enough supply.
But this was an issue in 1995 when I moved to Seattle. Part of the reason I moved to Seattle was because I was homeless in Portland. And there were arguments all throughout the county about, Multnomah and Clackamas, about affordable housing. And I left and I stayed in Seattle for 20 years.
Okay.
In that entire time, I went from being homeless to earning a bachelor's and a master's degree, and I'd been on unemployment 3 times. I've been back in Portland for 9 years, and so far I've been out of work this time for 2 years. I've been on unemployment 4 times in 9 years in Portland.
Well, you have done great. Congratulations.
Yeah, for
your
being
journey.
unemployed.
Well, not
right?
for the unemployed, but I'm talking about from going from being on the streets of Portland to moving to get the degrees and all the education and moving, and that's a success.
But I came back to Portland, and it's like, and I'm not the only one. There's a ton of highly educated, experienced people in this area that cannot find work.
Yeah. So right now, the economic indicators are that we have more jobs than we have workforce. It's the level of pay for the jobs which makes it hard to survive. But I did want, you asked me a question that I wasn't able to get to. No, that's all right. I love hearing your story. I could just sit here and I would love to hear your story. But you did ask me a question, so I want to make sure that I respond to it.
Yeah.
So a group of across the region got together, it was sort of like a think tank group. We went to Los Angeles to study. They had just passed an initiative to provide services for people who are unsheltered. And we studied that model. We also talked and studied other models for homelessness. I was very honored to be part of that initial group, along with some other elected.
I need to have you hold on just one moment. Hi, this is Sherry. How can I help you?
I had a question for your guest.
For Sonya Fischer? Sure, go for it.
I understand that she was recently appointed to county government early education position at the Association of Counties, and I wanted to find out what her vision was for Clackamas County and how those will work together.
Oh, thank you for the question. I believe that the caller is referring to, I was appointed through the National Association
Thank you.
of Counties to chair the Human Services and Education Committee. And this sets the policy for the nation from the county perspective. Highly influential when it comes to informing our federal administration, our president, and our Congress. We prepare resolutions. We educate counties across the country. Some of our key initiatives are childcare, our prenatal to 3 services, because we all know that early childhood is absolutely essential. Also, anti-poverty strategies. We look into education regarding social and emotional learning. We look at reducing trauma for children so that we can have better outcomes, which leads to reduced crime. We look at intergenerational families and the importance of that and support, and what kind of policies do we need to promote that. There's a whole host of policies that we promote. I have served as chair of a subcommittee for a couple years, children and families, but to be chair of the steering committee is quite an honor, and to be asked to do that was it was very humbling, and it's a very big responsibility. How it will work together with Clackamas County is I am Commissioner Martha Schrader was appointed also to, there's not very many steering committees at the national level. We are both appointed. She is for economic development mobility, and I am human services. We are looking to work together on the child care issue because that issue affects both. And how this works with Clackamas County is it really puts Clackamas County on the map. And as I was sharing with my commissioners today, Clackamas County is urban, rural, wild, frontier. We have agricultural land, farmland. We are truly a microcosm of the nation, not just of Oregon, but of the nation. So what comes from Clackamas County, the policies that come from our very diverse and wonderful electorate and the people who live here that inspire us to do the work that we do, is a good fit for the national advocacy. Things start here, get promoted there, and vice versa.
So are you bringing things that you learned when you were in LA up here?
Well, the LA is that's dealing with housing and homelessness. This is...
But at some point, doesn't that flow through?
Yes, so what happened with that is the group developed the homeless services measure that Metro decided to put on the ballot, which is a high income earner tax, and business high of over 5 million businesses pay a 1% of the profits for that goes into a fund that provides what the different local governments, so Clackamas County has a local implementation plan, Washington County has one, and does Multnomah County. And whereas Metro is sort of the overseer and the one that funnels the money through to the local jurisdictions and provides some oversight, it's really the local jurisdictions that are addressing what works in their community for solving homelessness. In Clackamas County, so this is our first year of having any resources. During COVID, we were able to use COVID relief dollars to take people who are unsheltered, put them into hotel, motel, shelter. We have been able to stably house almost a third of our homeless count out of COVID and into stable housing with the support of these very individualized services. So when you say what works for homelessness, it is meeting a person where they are, finding out what they say they need to be stably housed, tailoring the services to their unique needs. What we know doesn't work is saying, okay, you could go to this shelter here. You don't have room for your photo albums, for your pet, for your mementos that you have here while you're unsheltered, wherever it's in a park or in a tent. You have to leave all that behind, and
no, that's not right.
And you can go to this shelter, or there's this particular service, but you're going to have to get on a bus, go, a whole hour and a half across town to get to this particular place to get this service, and you have to go to this place and this place. No, you know what? That doesn't work. Navigation, which is a fancy word for social worker or case manager. Navigation, a person to sit with someone to help them figure out where they need to go, what they need to do, and provide the support they need to make the steps in their life. But
so where does the life-changing aspect of it come in?
You know what? It happens all that you hear the stories, and I'm sure that's going to be a great topic for your show, is talk to people who have received the support of, if it's a peer mentor or navigation.
There you go.
Or whatever it is. But you know what? You just try. Oh, you have done it. I don't have to tell you. I'll tell the audience, for the listening audience, if you just think, if you were unsheltered for a week, 2 weeks, how long would it be before you had some mental health crisis or substance use challenges? Anyone that is facing that incredible challenge would have, it would just be really challenging to.
Well, you're in survival mode.
Yeah.
And that's all you know is surviving. So where I was going with life-changing is, at some point, the biggest argument I hear from Republicans is, I don't want my tax dollars going to support other people. And to a certain extent, I would have to agree, because we're helping them get, or you guys, the commission and Clackamas County are helping the homeless people be housed. Number one issue, they need to be housed. Agreed, 110%. But after they're housed, at some point, it's got to stop, right? The funding, the supporting this person, unless they're having, severe mental issues or whatever, they've got to, the whole point of housing is to help them build support for themselves. So at some point, it has to stop. And so what I'm saying with the life-changing aspect of it is the life skills, the resources that they need to say they want to be living on their own without the help from the government. What channel or what pathway is the city advising for them?
So what I will tell
guiding
you,
them.
what I would tell you is meeting people where they are and helping them develop a plan for their life is what gets them to that next step.
Okay.
We just had a visit to the Veterans Village, we started that, gosh, was it 2018?
It was 2018.
Oh, gosh, the time, it just goes by so quickly. But the idea of the veteran, first of all, anyone who serves, well, anyone shouldn't be homeless,
No.
but especially people who've served our country. We have a goal for zero veterans homelessness. And because there are resources from the federal government to provide vouchers and other support for our veterans, there is no reason why if any veteran is listening now, please call Clackamas County, because we will help you get the support and the services that you need. But to start, our Veterans Village was a place for veterans to transition. It's a transitional shelter. It's pods for veterans to be in. They have a supportive community. They run their village community, and they have the support of staff there on site. And there has been amazing successes of not only veterans leaving the transitional shelter into housing, but also going into educational programs, into jobs, and then even coming back and working as
and that's great.
as staff.
That's awesome.
It's amazing to see what can happen. But the first step starts with an individualized plan and not assuming that we know what's best for people. That's what's been wrong so much with our social service delivery systems.
I have to agree. I understand. Yeah. You help me understand that a lot better, for sure. What opportunities do you see for Clackamas County in the future of commerce and growth? Like Malala, for instance. As much as they fight it, they're going to have to implement some business-friendly opportunities. As a commissioner for Clackamas County, what is your vision for business growth, say in Oregon City or Canby or Malala or, Westland, Lake Oswego? I guess Lake Oswego's Multnomah.
No, Lake Oswego's
Oh, is it
Clackamas too.
Clackamas County? So what
part
is
of it
the
is
vision
Multnomah.
for, especially the rural areas?
Yeah, so I think you have just touched on what makes Clackamas County so amazing. And that is what you've said, whether it's even Mount Hood, Rhododendron, Welch's, Malala, Canby, Westland, Wilsonville, Tualatin, parts of Portland, Milwaukee. I mean, we could go, the 16 cities, the vast, there's wild, suburban, agricultural. There's many different areas throughout Clackamas County, which makes Clackamas County uniquely positioned. We don't rely on one sector. We are not purely urban. We are not purely rural. We have all of these industries and sectors that work together to create our own vibrant economy. So what do we do as government officials? A lot of what we need to do.
Let's hold one moment. Thank you for calling. Do you have a question for Sonya?
Yes, I do. I'm calling because I have been watching Sonya, and I appreciate the work she's done for low-income people and for homelessness and housing. But I'd like to ask her what her priorities will be for her she's reelected.
Well, I'm sorry, can you restate the last part of your question? We had a blip of some sort.
Oh, sure. I just am curious about what her priorities will be for her next term if she's reelected.
Okay, thank you for the question.
Thank you. Do you mind listening? I'll hang up.
Sure.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you for the question. I think a lot of what is on people's mind is affordability and how are the prices keep going up, how are we going to sustain, how are we going to continue to make ends meet. So at local government, a lot of what your question was before the caller is really create an environment where our economy can thrive. And
Yes.
that means often government getting out of the way so that businesses can do what businesses do best, especially our small businesses. So we have the COVID recovery. We have not completely recovered, even though we're sitting here without masks. And we're not living day to day as if COVID is right on top of us. Our businesses don't necessarily feel that. Our families don't feel that. People in our community are still struggling. So what do we need to do? We need to continue to support our small businesses. I've been a supporter of using our direct allocation dollars for American Rescue Plan to support businesses. We did that in the beginning. The commission decided to pull it back a little bit, but now the commission's coming back and saying, oh yeah, this is important. Let's look at supporting our businesses, especially our small businesses in Clackamas County. Major priority. The other priority is continuing to support our public safety system. So Clackamas County has what's called Performance Clackamas, which is our goals of what we will achieve. And one thing that we put on the agenda when we all convened new commission back in January of 2020, yeah, January of 2020. Gosh, time just goes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Or maybe it's 2021, January of 2021, sorry. When the new commission came together, was to make sure that our public safety system was well funded. Well, one thing that we're looking at many years ago, there was a study done to look at a district across all of Clackamas County to help support our public safety system. Right now, we have a public safety levy. We have enhanced law enforcement districts. We have a big chunk, half of our general fund dollars to go to support public safety. So what can we do to make sure that we have the appropriate funding to assure that we have appropriate deputies that are patrolling, especially in our rural areas up on Mount Hood, more remote parts of Clackamas County, and that we have the support that our public safety system needs, which is beyond just the sheriff's office. It includes juvenile
Yes.
supports for juveniles. It is
Yes.
other pieces of our system that we need to make sure we fund. So that is a part of our Performance Clackamas. That is a major priority and goal. The other piece, so we, along with supporting our businesses, protecting and preserving our natural resources is very important. We can't give up on that. Part of what we love, you talk to anybody, in all those cities you mentioned, Camden, Malala, Mount Hood, Estacada, Wilsonville, we all love our natural landscape. And
do.
while we need to grow our economy, we need to increase the housing supply.
Yep.
We also must protect our prime farmland, and we must encourage our agricultural industry, and we must also protect our natural landscape. So all of that is so intricate and so important,
put
and
together,
it's
yeah.
very much a major priority, not to mention the one that I'm working on nationally and locally, childcare for all. You're going to
Is
see
it
more of
number
that. There's a group of advocates and influence across Clackamas County that have been meeting. There are 4 subcommittees. They are studying, they're getting their data together, they're doing it, they're putting it together because Clackamas County is a child care desert. A
Really?
child care desert. We do not
That is
have.
so important.
It is so important. How are we ever going to thrive as a community or in our economy if parents don't have access to affordable childcare?
When my kids were young, it was $600 a month for 3 kids. And that was almost 30 years. That was over 30 years ago.
Yeah.
I guess they hung up. Okay. So you are going in the direction of what I wanted to deal with next, which there's a couple questions, but where
Okay.
you brought up the police. I'm going to make the Willamette Falls announcement in a minute, where you were talking about police. As far as the county is concerned, and maybe even the state, how can we reduce crime without a lot of police enforcement? I mean, through education, through services, because as far as to me, if with the childhood development projections that you are working on, and getting people through good school programs, it starts in early childhood development. If they have a solid foundation, they're a lot less likely to be a criminal in the future. That's where it starts, as far as I'm concerned, having raised kids, who are all, substantial people in the community and stuff. What can we do to help lower the crime rate without the influence of police? What infrastructure is available to promote?
Yeah, I'm gonna touch on two areas. I'm first going to touch on what we're doing right now to deal with the immediate issues of today, and then I'm going to talk about your early childhood question. So I'm going to answer two different things. In regards to what should law enforcement be doing? Well, law enforcement needs to help protect the safety of the public. So much of my views on this are informed. We have our Peace Officers Association in Clackamas County, through many conversations with union members and really diving into what it's like to be a deputy or to work for Lake Oswego Police or Oregon City or one of our city jurisdictions, really asking the questions of what is the day in the life. And you know what? A lot of our law enforcement are spent doing things that law enforcement should not be doing.
Yes.
They are working as with people that are in an emotional crisis that really can best be handled by a social worker, mobile crisis, community paramedic. Law enforcement does not need to be managing those calls. I was actually in one moment with the former union president, and we were having a meeting. He was telling me, like 50% of our calls are going to deal with people that are unsheltered. It's a trespass. It's a nuisance. It's a this. And he got a call right there of somebody trying to steal something from Home Depot right there, and he had to go and deal with that. And of course, that's a crime, and of course, they need to respond. But most likely, it was somebody who is desperate and needs more infrastructure and support. But in the same time, we have to hold people who commit crimes accountable, which is also a very important piece. But key, which we're doing in Clackamas County, mobile crisis, which is sending out people who are mental health workers out to people that are having challenges. We have law enforcement assisted diversion. It's called the LEAD program. It's very, very good to keep people from recidivism that have been involved in the criminal justice system. And we also instigated a program called Go Teams during the pandemic. It's now transitioned to what's called Clackamas Safe and Strong. But it was a model that people who are trained as some mental health professionals, but even, I would say, para-mental health professionals could go out and help people, assist them in person when they're in crisis. They were at the ice storm shelters. They were at the, when there was the heat dome. They would just go and be out in the community and assist people where they were. Those types of interventions are really important so that people have the support that they need. So that's one question for that, what we're doing right now to help reduce or just make our law enforcement resources do what they're intended to do. I think is really important.
Yes.
Regarding early childhood, now you hit the nail on the head. We have to support our youngest residents, and that starts in utero. And we have to look and study and understand the disparities that are across our spectrum of different communities, and certain communities have different birth outcomes than other communities, and there are disparities. So understanding who has access to good prenatal care, who has access to healthy foods, and all of those things while a baby is in utero is really important so that we can help provide targeted supports to especially mothers and families, so that if they are in need, and we know that we have a hunger issue in our county, and we have food banks. I'm sure you know in your town of Malala, there are tremendous efforts of making
Yes.
sure that the community is fed. That's all across Clackamas County. So that's really important. Babies in utero, supporting mothers, supporting them to have healthy babies. The next piece is all of the supports that families might need. And it doesn't have to be if there are necessarily children with special needs or disabilities. Of course, that requires more support. But it's hard to raise children. It's hard to know what to do with a young baby. I mean, I was so blessed when I was a young mother. My husband at the time, his mom was a child care provider. She was excellent. She taught me everything about how I needed to care of that baby. But if I wouldn't have had that support, I didn't even know how to bathe the baby, how to do anything with a baby at the young mother at the age of 19. But I had natural supports. Some families don't.
No.
Some families don't have
not at
that.
all.
So we have home visiting services. We have an early learning hub, which is a cross-section of pretty amazing people in Clackamas County that work as professionals, and also parent-informed and citizens advocates that are engaged in setting the policy for Clackamas County. And that is where the Child Care for All initiative has sprung from, and also just the policy of supporting children and families.
We have a phone call.
Okay.
Hello, do you have a question for Sonya?
Yes, I do. She might have already said this, but I'm curious about what Sonia's priorities will be for the next term if she's reelected, and what some of her biggest hopes are for accomplishing in the county.
What great questions. Thank you for the call. Are you listening on TV or on YouTube?
I was trying on YouTube and I just lost it again.
Well, you can go ahead and stay on the line if you want, and I'll have Sonya answer your question.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, so I answered some of those with the last question, but I do want to mention community, building trust in government is another major priority. And so continuing with our community engagement, really listening to the public and listening to what their priorities are really helps inform us as leaders. During the pandemic, we were not able to go out into the community and talk with folks. Now we're able to do that. But we learned a few things. We learned that an evening with a Zoom call, with a listening session to just listen to what are the concerns of the community, whether it's transportation or whether it's public safety or whatever the issue is, homelessness, mental health challenges, whatever, childcare. These are all the listening sessions where we get a wealth of information that helps direct us in setting policy. The one thing, though, that I do, it's just on my mind, and I'm working it behind the scenes, I'm working it every angle I get, I'm working it, and that is when we're looking at congestion pricing across the region, because Abernathy Bridge was just celebrated. We're working on it.
Yeah.
We're fixing it. We have to have that work done on the Abernathy Bridge. Critical not just to Clackamas County, but to the region, to the state. Yes. It's a federal highway. It is super important. But the funding of that expansion should not be done on the backs of Clackamas County businesses and residents.
That's true.
So when we're talking about congestion pricing that's going to be implemented throughout this region of the Tri-County area, we need to look at what I call geographic diversity, where people don't have a pathway from anywhere other than across that bridge, or it's a small business or a business that has to go over that bridge multiple times a day. There needs to be allowances for the unique needs of individuals and businesses in regards to any congestion pricing scheme. So all that will be worked out within the next few years. It's not worked out now. I'm so impatient. I just want assurances that Clackamas County will have special allowances. But we don't have those right now. It's just all this input. In fact, right now, there is input being given or being taken from our partner's estate and through our other jurisdictions regarding this issue. So I encourage the public to get engaged with it, and let your opinion be known. I was just thinking, how many times do you cross the Abernathy Bridge every day? Today I've crossed it twice. What was it? 3 times today. We aren't divided. That river does not divide Clackamas County. It is. It requires a bridge. We've got 2. We've got the Oregon City Bridge, and we've got the Abernathy Bridge, and we don't have a grid system on either side for diversion.
I'm on both at least a couple times a week.
Yep.
At least. And that would be horrible if something were to, especially the Oregon City Bridge. That needs to be expanded. I don't know if there's a way to do that, but it needs to be expanded. Did she answer your question?
That was great. Thank you for all you do, Sonya. I really appreciate your work.
Thank you for the call. So I have to make an announcement real quick. You are watching us from Willamette Falls Media Center in Oregon City. The address is 1101 Jackson Street, Oregon City, what is it, like 97045. If you want to call with questions, you can call us at 503-650-0198. Also, this facility here used to be the Oregon City Art Building, Oregon City High School Art Building. It is an asset to the community if you want to volunteer. They're always looking for new people to come in and volunteer. You can have a show like what we have going here. We're in Studio A. They have a podcast suite. They have a commercial kitchen. They have a Studio B, which is a smaller version of this studio. You can do interviews. We have kids shows that come in here. A whole plethora of different activities. They will take donations. You can go to wfmcstudios.org and click that donate button, and they would be so happy to receive some funding to keep this building going and upgrade it. They just did some recent upgrades. It's fabulous. And we are talking with Sonya Fischer. She's Clackamas County Commissioner, seat 5, and she is up for re-election, and I've been beating her away with questions. Probably some she wasn't expecting, and I apologize. So we've dealt with that one. Do you have any insight on what Oregon is doing for women in trigger law states?
You know, I do have some insight. This issue is very personal to me, and it's very personal to many women. As we talked about earlier, I got pregnant right out of high school and had my baby just a week after I turned 19.
Mine just before.
Okay. So for me, the issue of choice is so important that it be preserved. When I found out I was pregnant, my parents told me that I had to have an abortion, or they were cutting me off. They would not help me go through college. They wouldn't help me that I made my bed, I was going to lie in it, give up my education, raise that baby, and I was getting ready to go to Willamette University to study political science and begin my life and study politics and possibly go to law school and do those things, and they said no, that I couldn't do it. So I listened to them and I went to the abortion clinic. But I was conflicted because I didn't feel like that was what I could do for me. And I asked the nurse, I said, could this cause me challenges in the future? And she literally took her hands in mine and said, if you have any question about proceeding with this today, go home. You could come back. You do not need to go through with this procedure. And so I did. I left, and I had decided that I was going to put the baby up for adoption. My parents said, okay, we'll have you go live with your aunt that lives in Colorado. I went and I did that. This was 37 years ago.
We are not far apart in age. It could, wow.
But what happened in Colorado is they would not allow me to pick the family because they only had the ability to hand your baby off to an agency.
Yeah, back then. Yeah.
So I couldn't do that. I couldn't just I wanted this child to know that I loved her so much that I would choose her family because I was just too young and I needed to get my grounding in life. But I couldn't do that, so I came back. I got married. There was the church full of people, walked down the aisle and had that baby, and 3 weeks later.
Wow.
And that precious Christine, as you know, had significant severe developmental disabilities.
That's what you were saying.
I chose to have that child. I chose to love that child with all of her challenges and all that it brought to me. And it wasn't easy going through the grief and the trauma and the struggle of what that meant. But that was my choice. And I'm so appreciative that I had the choice, that nobody could say, this is what you have to do. I did what was right for me. And I believe that every woman should have control over her reproductive health care, and those decisions need to be like it was between me and the nurse and the doctor at the clinic up at OHSU. It needs to be a decision between a woman and her health care provider, and that's what needs to happen. Yep. So the living in a state that has reproductive health equity is really important, and I will work really hard as an advocate and as a woman, like many women out there, I'm sure you're one as well, that will fight to preserve that, because being able to have that choice is so very important.
It is. So can people from other states, if they're allowed to leave their state, come to Oregon for help and they don't have to be a resident?
Well, and that's my understanding. Now, as a county commissioner, our role, that would be the state legislature is the entity that passed the laws that created the reproductive health care rights for women in Oregon. But it's my understanding that, yes, there will not be barriers for women there are barriers, of course, because they have to get to Oregon in the first place, but that there will be options once they're here.
So where might I go for more information to distribute to followers on social media?
Yeah, so I would check with Planned Parenthood is a good resource.
Okay.
I think that provides very good, reliable information.
They do. I was a Planned Parenthood patient for a little while too, so yeah, completely understand. I want to take a moment to thank you for joining us, and this has been a awesome discussion, and I've appreciated your insight on different things. What are your thoughts on how Clackamas County should move forward on some of our more serious issues?
So part of what's such a major priority for me, and I'm going to put a shout out to Bob Mahoney, who's a constituent who has been just a gem of an advisor in my world. But one thing that he has said that I so agree with is, he says, Sonya, there are people at the other end of every decision you make.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely right. And so when my commission starts getting, we can get stuck in maybe this ideology or that ideology or this belief or that belief, it's like, you know what? Put that aside. Let's look at the people. Let's look at the people at the other end of every decision. And you know what? Everybody agrees to that. That's not controversial.
No.
So breaking through where there are divisions, we are in a very divisive time here, not just in Clackamas County, but in the nation and the world. So to be able to break through that and look at where our consensus points are, I've been trained as an attorney, former social worker, and through my work in advocating for policies for people with disabilities, you've got to find where we can agree. And that is how we move us forward. And I have been really proud of our ability as a commission to break through some of that divide, to stay focused on what matters and having a framework through our strategic initiatives, which we have all agreed on, which is our focus and what we will accomplish.
Who decides at the county level what is important?
We, as the commissioners, set the policy, overarching goals for the county. We do that. We had a retreat with all 5 commissioners. All 5 commissioners agreed to the strategic priorities that we have, and the county administrator administers. So the county commission is not involved in the day-to-day operations of the county. That is the job for the county administrator.
Okay. And how does, you'll have to excuse me, because like I told you, I don't know anything about how local initiatives are formed, where they come from, or anything like this, and I should, but I don't.
That's okay.
How does the county find out what needs to be addressed within the county? What the people are worried about, what they're talking about? For instance, I think it's a great idea to have Max go out to Malala. I would love to see Max go from Portland out to Salem at some point, you know, in increments. That's a huge ask, but at least to Malala. And you don't really want to know the comments I hear from people in Malala outside of, oh, that just brings drugs and crime, when no, it doesn't. A very small portion of the population who utilize public transportation are an issue. Everybody else uses it for commuting and getting where they need to go. And I don't believe that we should subject people to isolation because others are scared of what might be a ramification. So where does the county learn of the issues and what people are talking about within the county? Do people write in? Do you have somebody taking calls? How does that work?
Yeah, there's lots of different ways. So first of all, we're all elected officials. We run countywide, and there's many opportunities to engage with constituents, with voters. We are, I consider, what's called an ombudsman to the people. So people reach out to us all the time. I have so many opportunities to assist constituents, to listen to their concerns, to help them. So we are informed that way, individually. We do have listening sessions where that's like the old form of a town hall, where people come, they share their concerns, and we get information in a more formal way. Our staff does a lot of community engagement on specific issues, whether that's land use, whether that's when we developed our local implementation plan for homeless services, whether that's when we did our affordable housing effort through the bond, through Metro, and reaching out to the community. They engage with the community pretty deeply, and that all gets compiled, and that also informs us as county commissioners as we set the policy. We have amazing staff at Clackamas County, and fortunately I've had the blessing of really digging deep in understanding the issues, especially an issue really important, substance use disorders. Oregon is one of the worst for availability of treatment.
Yep.
We have worked really hard. I was the one that encouraged Clackamas County to sue the pharmaceuticals, and we did that. We were one of the first counties. Other counties joined along. Oregon just did the settlement for the opioid litigation, which is going to bring in millions of dollars into Clackamas County. We just had a briefing today on how that will help people in our community. So how do we know what we know? From a variety of resources and talking to each other. All 5 of us are independently elected officials. We have different perspectives, we have different views, and it's critical that we listen. Even if we don't agree, we have to break through that to understand what the issues are, because every decision affects people.
It does, very much so. I am not sure what else. Is there anything you want to say?
Well, what I would like to say is I so appreciate all of the support that I have received in my efforts as continuing Clackamas County Commissioner. There have been so many people that have reached out to offer volunteer time, to offer donations, to be engaged with support and advice and camaraderie, and it's been so heartfelt. And I just want to thank the 46,000 people in Clackamas County cast their vote for me when the race of 4 in the primary, and that I honor and cherish. That is a big deal that so many people came out and cast their vote. So thank you to the voters of Clackamas County. But getting through to the general election is not going to be the easiest thing. There is a governor's race that's pretty spicy, and it's going to take a lot of air out of the room. There are congressional races that are going to have millions of dollars coming into them, and they're going to flood the airways and flood the mailboxes. So please, to the residents of Clackamas County, if you're not registered to vote, register. And for those and if you're registered, vote. Make sure you vote. Please, please, please vote. In the Clackamas County Commission race, the last general election race, in one of the races when Ken Humberston and Mark Scholl ran, there was a 40% undervote. So what I want to say to my fellow residents in Clackamas County, my fellow voters, my fellow constituents, please register to vote and vote down the ballot. Read your voter's pamphlet statement. Be engaged. Ask questions. If you don't understand something or you want to know where a candidate stands on a position, please reach out to their campaign. Reach out to them. That's our jobs as people running for office. We need to let you know where we are on issues that are important to you. So I appreciate the opportunity to share, and I really appreciate the dialogue and the conversation. Thank you.
You understand, just so people know, I used to be a progressive or Dem that didn't vote in the in between, in the midterms. I just don't have any time for it. Ken Humberson didn't get reelected, and that will be the last time. That will be the last time I did not vote in the midterms. So get out there, get registered, and vote. We have another call, and we just have 4 minutes. Good evening. Thank you for calling. Do you have a question for Sonya?
I do. Sonya, what would you say is the biggest learning curve you've experienced since your appointment to the commission in 2017?
Oh, I love that question. So my whole career, I've been such an advocate for children and families, people with disabilities. My whole career stemmed from being a mother of that precious little girl who couldn't go to preschool, and I fought through many different things, to advocating for services for families, to closing down Fairview Institution, and was really focused in that arena. And I still have a tremendous amount of expertise. But what I learned is if you really care about people and you care about the most vulnerable among us, then you care about wastewater, you care about recycling, you care about garbage, you care about mediation services, you care about making sure we have a justice system and a county courthouse, which we accomplished. You care about all of the different things, public safety system, you care about, the county government touches the lives of every single person in a very significant way. So, understanding the interrelation, land use planning, housing, homelessness. I mean, I could go on and on about the ways that we touch the lives, mental health services, substance use disorder. Anyway, they touch the lives of people. And understanding the whole spectrum is, when you get the importance of all of that, then you're truly helping those that are the most challenged in our community.
It's nice to finally see people understanding that, because that's something that this county has needed for ages and ages, years and years.
Transportation, roads. I could go on and on.
When I left, I was one of the first people in high school, one of the first people to get on Max over in Gresham. Well, it used to be considered Southeast Portland now, but now it's Gresham. And used to ride it all the time. And when I left, it was still just barely, up and down from Gresham to Portland, and it started going to Beaverton. When I came back, oh my goodness, we have all of these different lines. And so there's access for people who never had that before. Bus 33 was my home for years. So I want to thank you and the commission for helping to innovate and get the region moving in the most cost-effective, energy-efficient manner possible.
Yeah.
Which is another question that we might have to do another time.
Talking about
energy efficiency.
Yes.